Hello, dear teacher and classmates. My name is Genesis Munoz, and I'm here today to talk about dead and extinct languages. Okay, so let's start by defining what is a dead language. A language can be considered dead when its native speakers are no longer able to speak that language, or when it is used for particular or specific situations, or when it is not used in a frequently way. And in the same way, we can also consider that a language is dead when it is not used in daily communication exchange or when it is not longer considered a mother tongue, okay? So an example of a dead language will be Latin, for example. Have you seen that in horror movies, specifically exorcism movies, the priest start to pray in Latin when during the whole movie he has been talking in Spanish or in English? This is an example of a particular situation in which someone used a dead language, okay? Most of the time, dead languages are used for religious purposes, okay? Maybe for rituals or to read sacred books or to pray, even to pray, okay? Here we have the second example, which is Sanskrit, okay? This is an Indian language that is considered a religious language because it's the most ancient language in the world, okay? So this language is used to read sacred books for religious rituals and to pray, okay? And why it is considered a dead language? Because it is not longer used as a mother tongue, and it is only used to read, to pray, and for religious purposes, okay? Now, let's define what is an extinct language. A language becomes extinct when its native speakers are no longer alive. Hence, that particular language is no longer in any aspect of life. So now, what is the difference between extinct language and dead language? The difference will be that even though dead languages are not used frequently, they are used, okay? Maybe in a reduced amount of time and just in particular situations, but they are used sometimes, okay? However, extinct languages are no longer used, okay? It can be because all the native speakers that speak that language are no longer alive, or it can be because that extinct language did not have a breathing form, therefore there aren't registers of that language. The reason behind a language becoming extinct can be many, but some of them are war, persecution, death, or natural disasters that can kill entire populations. So an example of this will be the Burgundian case, which is a language that was spoken in German, okay? So this is an example of a language that become extinct due to war, okay? This is an example of consequences of persecution and expulsion. In the 5th century, the Roman ruler Flavius killed almost most of Burgundians, most of the population of Burgundians. And the reduced amount of Burgundians that were left, they were forced to resettle, of course, out of German. So due to the few words and inscriptions that were preserved of that language, it becomes extinct, okay? Because there weren't registers of that language. So now let's talk about consequences of disappearing languages for cultural heritage. In this case, I choose two consequences that affects native speakers' lives. The first one was native speakers' isolation, okay? Specifically in elderly people. Most of the time, before the disappearance of a language, elderly people are usually the last ones using that language, which makes them feel sad, isolated, and depressed, knowing that it is very likely for their native language or their mother tongue to be forgotten because, as I mentioned before, there are some languages that do not contain a written form, and therefore there are no way in which someone can register that language in order to it can be transmitted to a new generation. Okay. And the second reason is native consequences. I'm sorry, the second consequence is native loss of identity. Before we talk about elderly people and how the loss of their language will affect them, but now we are going to talk about how that loss of their language will affect children. Okay. The native speaker can feel out of place or experience lack of identity in modern society, okay? Because let's remember that usually that languages are used in a reduced amount of people, okay? In a reduced group. So if that language is becoming dead, it means that the children will be forced to learn a second language, not because he wants to do it, but because he has to do it if he wants to be able to communicate with others and to fit in society. So due to the cultural beliefs and practices that children can experience difficulties in learning that second language, and also that those children will have a hard time by adapting themselves to the new culture. And the saddest part is probably that even if at some point of their lives they find another native people that have the same mother tongue than them, they will not be able to identify themselves, you know. Even if they share the same mother tongue, they will not be able to identify those people, due to when they start to grow up, they will start to forget that language, because again they are not practicing that language because it is a dead language. Okay. So they will start to forget that language, and at some point of their lives they will not be fluent at all in that language. And therefore, even if they find people who know that language, they will not be able to use that language to communicate between them. And in that way, we are not just talking about losing a language, losing grammar structures, words of vocabulary, because let's remember that language has also a cultural background. It shares beliefs and rituals and religions and all of that. It has a background that those children will have to or forget or to ignore. And they will have to adopt other cultures background in order to feel that they are part of society. This is the references that I use while doing my work. And that is all. Thank you very much.